This is the segment on marketing and communications plans for internal and external audiences. As you go through the transformation process, there are several sub-plans that you need to focus on. This is just one. In the next webinar, Genni's going to focus on the human services plan. So let's get started with this one. You know, as I've mentioned before in several of the webinars, there's a new service model that we're converting to. Instead of facility-based services, we are moving towards the expectation of competitive integrated employment along with integrated community engagement. So we're changing how we deliver services. And we need to focus on, particularly for this webinar, the components of a transitional communications plan and what important messages to include in the plan. What to consider in the very important branding of our agencies, and the essential components and messages to include in a strong marketing plan. Bottom line, we really have to start with the backbone of our communications plan, and we've gone over this before in some other webinars, is creating our vision, what are our values, and what's the mission statement. You know, coming to terms with this, and particularly in terms of our planning team, all agreeing on what our vision, values, and mission is really important in how we roll out our all of our communications. The agency that I was formerly the CEO of, and this is abbreviated, you know, after working with our team for an extended period of time and saying, you know, just what is our vision for people with disabilities? And it's everyone should be a valued, contributing community member. That's our big, broad vision, 500 feet looking down. This is what we want the world to look like. Now, your vision, you know, doesn't have to be exactly this, but, you know, sitting down with the team, hashing this out, you know, what should the world look like for people with disabilities? Our values, we actually had about 5 or 6 value statements that we came up with. I've kind of consolidated this for you in that we believe that everyone should have educated choice of the people they're with, their daily activities, and their dreams for their future. And then the mission, we had to ask ourselves, so what role does our agency play in accomplishing the vision? A lot of people have strange mission statements that, you know, they want to make the world a better place and all that, but it really doesn't nail down specifically what is our agency going to do here. And what we came up with for our mission was advancing community support and opportunities for people living with disabilities. So, you know, we were looking really hard at, you know, how do we work with the community to provide opportunities for people with disabilities. So managing change, that's what this is all about. And our communication plan plays an essential role in that. We want to create followers. We want to move everyone with us in this vision and to build this value that we have across the community. We want to build teams that includes all the community members and our constituents. So we want to have our values, our vision, our mission, our agency name out front, in front of everybody. We want to inspire other people to pick up the baton so that we can delegate some of the transformation duties to others, that we can't do this all by ourselves as a program manager or CEO or COO or CFO. We've got to have a whole team. So we've got to create a culture of inclusion throughout the community. And we have to have team planning and problem solving. And that's MBWA is management by walking around. We've got to be there in the community with our people. So our communication plan is going to help us build this team among our board members, our administration, participants, direct service staff, and the community at large. We're trying to move everyone simultaneously in the same direction so we can build these support systems and opportunities in the community. Now, communication during times of change, I'm having a hard time reading this one then. During the times of change, those potentially impacted want to know what's happening. And in the absence of correct information, people are going to fill in the blanks, and often with the wrong information. They're going to take a negative view of this. So you want to include people from all aspects of your constituency in the planning process so that you can reflect their concerns and their questions. You can answer them up front and avoid a lot of the information, wrong information. But, this whole transformation process is new to you, and it might actually be a little frightening and create some anxiety. So you're going to say, well, but I might not have all the answers. So you really need to communicate what you know. You need to be honest and transparent with all your constituencies, and aspire to and how everyone will be a part of the creating the new order. You've got to, be really open-minded and somewhat fearless in stepping out and creating these changes and welcoming other people's point of view of how you're going to address this. Often, almost every state Genni and I have gone into, and there's been the beginning of the transformation process, there's always one or two providers who become over anxious about it, and they create actually more negative information that they're going to have to take back later on as they begin to accomplish success in creating these opportunities. Eventually, people really see the light that this is a better way to provide services, even though it might be challenging and create a lot of anxiety. So before you, step out there and, want to fight these changes that the federal government is requiring now as a means to change the service delivery system, it's really open your heart and try to embrace the change, even if it's still unsettling, you still don't understand why all this is happening or where this is eventually going. It's, sit back and relax a little bit and try to embrace it and not cause more problems than you need by creating others having very negative thoughts about the whole process. And again, it's about team planning. It's listening to new ideas. It's creating an environment of innovation and experimentation, and it's developing those pilots. So you start slow. You make small mistakes rather than big mistakes. You provide the needed training and resources to make this successful, and thank people for whatever contributions they make for making this a successful adventure. So the basics of a communication plan. You have to establish a purpose to begin with. And much like your mission, you want to effectively gain, expand, and evolve the trust and reputation of your organization that you've already built up after all these years. You want to maintain transparency in the process. You want to educate stakeholders about the new direction in the field, and you want to engage stakeholders to become invested in the change. So you're moving this entire team, the community, with your organization as you make these changes. You want to make sure that you use people-first language, be it brochures or your website, or if you're doing some public speaking, you want to make sure you speak appropriately and respectfully about all the individuals you're supporting. This is the time to remove any stigmas that people have about people with disabilities, and we'll talk a little bit more about this a little bit later, especially about pictures, what they communicate, and how we need to revise a lot of our print media. And that no person should be defined by his or her disabilities. They are an employee first, or they're a community member first, they're a coworker. They're not somebody with just a disability. And here's some quick little tidbits. You've all been in this field long enough to know this, but this might be a good slide to show some of your board members who might be new to the field that a little catching up to do. Someone isn't autistic. They are someone that may have autism. That kind of speech that you want to promote. So in using people-first language in assessing how you're communicating, you want to look at and overhaul all of your print documentation. You really want to take a hard look at this stuff. I remember when I first became CEO, we had a little man as a logo with his arms up and had a big heart across his chest, which only communicated some wrong stereotypes, that this is about love and taking care of people, not really providing people equal opportunity because they have value. So we had to reassess all of that. We also had to look at things like our name. Our name was St. John's Child Development Center at the time. And for the last 5 years or so, we had been providing services for adults. So that was pretty demeaning. So we had to look at all of this stuff. We had to determine how to articulate the transition to staff and board. How are we going to present this, and how are we going to help them become ambassadors? Not just hear what we had to say and understand and perhaps support, but we needed them out in the field talking the talk and being role models for the rest of the community. We had to determine how to articulate to external audiences, our community members, because we wanted them to be role models too to other people. And we had to include an understanding about the whole transition process in the communication plan. I'm hearing some very strange noises. I don't know if the rest of you are hearing this. So mute your phones if you've just come on. So one of the critical things that you need to address once you get past your vision and your values and your mission is to begin talking about your comparative advantage. And it's really about how are you going to communicate to both internally and externally why your agency is delivering a better service than you used to, than other agencies out there. And this is going to, how you do that is going to be very different from one agency to another. Some things you might want to look at is your mission and vision unique? Do you have a unique history about your agency? What kind of services are you providing? You know, is it early intervention services as well as adult services or school services or residential services? You know, how active are you? Are you really trying to change the environment for people? Are you politically active? Are your personnel different? Do you have different requirements? All your people have to have a degree. What kind of training do you provide? Is everyone ACRE trained? Do you have a unique organizational structure? I know after several years of our transformation, we ended up with 8 different corporations doing a variety of different services and in different states. Do you have a board of directors? Are they volunteer people? Are they community leaders? Partnerships. Do you have unique partnerships that make your agency better? What kind of funding structure do you have that might be unique? Do you have outcomes? 50% of everybody who comes here ends up in competitive integrated employment. 100% of our people are in community programs. You know, how do you report? What kind of technology do you use? What kind of volunteers do you have? All of these things may make you unique. In addition to that, your geography, your demographics, the region, if you have political viewpoints, current events, local history, organizational history, all of these things could add to your comparative advantage. This is kind of a summary. There's 2 of them here of the agency that Genni and I worked at. And we created a comparative advantage that looked something like this, to where, we were St. John's Community Services and celebrating 148 years of dedicated service to children and adults with disabilities. We were mission-driven, existing solely to meet the needs of people with disabilities. We were a nonprofit. We were fearless, aggressive, and passionate internally and externally about our work on behalf of people. We never backed down from fighting for the rights of people with disabilities. We were always engaged with the government. We had a tagline of creating social change that we used on all our letterhead. And our legacy was deep-rooted and prestigious. We had a history since 1868 when we were founded. We were here for the long term with financial stability and quality services. So that was one example of comparative advantage. Another one, for the same agency, we were providing direct service, multi-level program and diversification across 4 states, serving over 700 people. Eventually, we were serving over, I think, 800 or 900 people. We were CARF certified, and we were actually the only company in the United States. We're certified in 5 states simultaneously and received a perfect score. We didn't receive 1 recommendation in our monitoring. We had a sound business system that relied on advanced technology, and we had a corporate compliance system to ensure quality. We were person-centered and believed we were innovative, responded in unique ways to address individual circumstances, choices, and their dreams for the future. And we had a dedicated staff committed to people we support, and on and on and on. So these are just 2 examples of comparative advantage that you really need to think about coming together as a team about how is our agency really different? What aspects of our agency are we going to promote? And you might promote different aspects to different target populations, and we're going to get into that a little bit. After you do a comparative advantage of what's so good about our agency and why are we different, why should we be proud and stuff, we really want to promote this to both internally and externally. So we want to begin to prepare our, primarily, initially, our management staff and our board members, but eventually all of our staff to be able to express this to the greater community. So we want to take that comparative advantage and we want to break this down into approximately 30 seconds using people first language, clear and concise, telling the community who you are, what your organization does, a broad, 5,000-foot view of your agency, and try for each audience to answer the question, how does this really impact me? So you're going to take your team and you're going to play with this for a while. You're going to take your, as I said before, you start with your vision, what you believe in, your mission. You break this down then, and you come up with your comparative advantage. And now you're going to try to summarize this. You're going to draft it with the team. You're going to formalize it. And you really need to practice this. What we did when we went through this process is we actually videotaped our managers giving the elevator speech, and we would play it back and critique each other of, how well they did. Did they say, 500 times during the presentation? Did they speak sincerely? Were they having good eye contact with people? So there was the whole delivery of it. And we could use this then at board meetings, working with new members of how to present the agency to the community. Our direct service staff, if they were questioned out in the community of what are you doing, who are you, why are you here, they would have an immediate response because they knew who the agency was and what they were trying to promote. Here's a sample elevator speech. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but like we would say, St. John's Community Service is a nonprofit headquartered in Washington, D.C., and we've been in business since 1868. Here it's 1965. What is the mission? What kind of services do you provide? Just a very quick snapshot and, what is it we're trying to achieve as a human service company. So you've got the elevator speech and you're practicing this. You also have to identify all of the stakeholders. Who is it that you're trying to influence, that you're trying to bring along with you, who can provide some kind of support opportunities to your whole endeavor of moving your services more into the community. So, of course, there's the people that you support that, they're part of your target population. There's the staff. There's the families. Residential providers are very important because as you go out into the community, if you don't have the residential provider with you, they can sabotage your entire effort of not getting people to work on time and not being dressed appropriately and that kind of stuff. You want to bring all your government agencies with you. So if you're doing newsletters or websites or brochures, you want to make sure that the government agencies, have copies of everything and know and understand who you are and where you are in the transformation process. Your funders, it's not always government agencies. It could be private foundations. It could be civic groups. It could be you do annual appeals, and it could be community members. So you've got to take that into consideration. And then all your community partners. Where are your volunteer sites? Where are people going out in the community? So you've got employers, you've got contractors, you might have other civic associations, you've got legislatures. So you're going to have to take that elevator speech and begin to think, how are you going to edit it just slightly for each of these target populations, because they're going to have a little bit different viewpoint and needs about people with disabilities being more active in the community. So you're identifying the message for each group. For people served, there's a variety of things they're going to be wondering about. Is this maybe job potential? Is this going to affect my my Social Security, my benefits? Am I still going to be able to have my friends that were at the center? We need to plan on that. If people have been together for 10, 15, 20 years, they don't want to lose their friends. They need to have some assurance that, they're going to be part of the group or continue those relationships. I'm not moving forward. Byron?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Okay. My slide wasn't moving forward from it. You have families that some people really haven't gotten to the point where they think their child is going to be safe in the community, or that they don't think that they're capable of working. So we have to structure our communication to support them, to recognize some of their concerns. But what we found, especially working with families, is to bring other families in, bring parents who child has been successful in the community to help mentor other families that might have some deep concerns about the process. You've got staff. Staff believe that, I've been here at the workshop for the last 10 years. this is what I signed up for. I'm not sure I really can accept this kind of change. They know they're the people they support in this environment, and it's a little scary going out there. So we need to let them know that change is can be anxiety provoking, but we're going to be there to support them, and we're going to provide the training and answer their questions as they come up, that we're a team and we're in this together. You've got funders who want to know how their money is being used, and is it going to be used appropriately out in the community? So kind of bottom line, as you get through to the comparative advantage and the elevator speech, you identify the audience. You take that core message that you've developed, the elevator speech, and you begin to edit it for each target population. You think of the strategies and how you're going to communicate this information. Is it going to be brochures? Is it going to be group meetings? Is it going to be your website, your newsletter? And how often are you going to be going after people using the various mediums that you do? There's, I think, a common practice in the communications field that you really need to target people at least 3 times with the same message for it to really sink in to that target population. So here's a quick and dirty example for the people you support, that you're going to have individual discussions with people. You're going to use some of your person-centered planning sessions to highlight being in the community, going to jobs. You're going to have people who have been successful in the community come back and talk to their friends. And the mediums you're going to use might be pictures of people being successful out in the community, them telling their own stories, maybe in a PowerPoint presentation. You might have videos. One critical thing that a strategy we use is we made sure that people who were going out into the community, when we first started it, that when they came back to the center at the end of the day, that they had maybe 15 minutes to a half hour to talk to their friends about what they did that day. So we would encourage the excitement of the brand new adventure. I've been out in the community, and I think as a friend, you might like doing this too, having those kind of conversations. So each group we would target and formally write up how we were going to address them and what kinds of communication we were going to present to each of our target populations. Then, aside from the whole communications field, how we're representing to the community and internally the whole transformation process, we also had to look at marketing and branding. Who was our agency? How do you want to be perceived? Disability organizations are in the business of selling dignity, respect, and quality of life. So how do you do that? Your brand is the gateway to sharing, this image with the public. You want to stay away from stereotypes. You want to set standards in the community and how you want your organization and the people you support to be perceived. I want to go quickly to that's too quick. There's a picture coming up that I want you to take a look at. In addition, your business practices have to be high quality if you want the community to really respect you and not think of you just as a charity and not quite business-like. You want to standardize a lot of your business behavior. Oftentimes, what we see with a lot of agencies, especially smaller agencies, is they don't have a standard greeting on the phone, on their answering system. You don't know who you're talking to when you get a voicemail. Standardized email signatures are really important. If you ever, oftentimes, you guys, the providers that I'm working with, I'll be looking for Joe, who is a program manager, and I'll go through my emails trying to find the phone number, and I'll find an email from Joe, but there's no job title, there's no other email address, there's no address to the agency. It's missing so many things that I can't call that person directly because it's missing information. Business cards are the same way. Oftentimes, business cards have logos that are very juvenile, that aren't really respectful of the people we serve. It'll be a whole bunch of people holding hands or something, rather than something that's communicating that these people are in the community and they're respected community members. A lot of people don't recognize that you should be on time to all meetings. There's just so many just general business behaviors that we need to standardize throughout our agencies as part of our branding process. We need to look at our agency names. As I was saying before, ours was St. John's Child Development Center, and it really didn't represent our people. Sometimes our names are cute and really represent kind of a caring for mentality rather than the dignity of the people we serve. Logos are kind of the same thing. That's why we changed ours to driving social change. Taglines, kind of the same thing. Websites. So often we have, a couple Down syndrome people being hugged on our website while we're trying to communicate that these people are capable of holding down a job and should have the dignity and respect as other people. Our brochures, our letterhead, social media, and signage just in general, all these things we really need to take a look at. Name, logo, tagline, letterhead, signage is the first impression people have. We really need to be thoughtful. Can a separate name be developed for employment services versus the parent agency? You might want to have a program name that has more to do with community involvement and employment rather than a St. John's Community Services that is more generic, that doesn't inform the community of what this particular program's mission is. Website media, pretty much all the same stuff. We need to have professionals help us. Sometimes we can get university students to take us on if we're a nonprofit to save costs, but oftentimes when we try to do it ourselves without the training and background, it ends up being unbusinesslike and a little juvenile. Branding photos. This is what I was looking for. Photos are very important and can really send a message way beyond anything that you come up with in words. You need to develop an archive of photographs of people working, living, and enjoying the natural supports rather than the pity and the charity photos that most of us have used in the past. This is a perfect example. I mean, this is a great picture. You've got to love this picture. But if you're, trying to find employment opportunities for people, if you're trying to promote respect and dignity and independence, this is not the photo to use. Here's some photos that you could use. And if anybody's interested, I can actually send these photos to you if you want to use them in brochures. We want to be active. We want to be promoting ability. We want to show inclusion and independence. And we not only want to capture in the frame, the interaction, the focus, the actual activity of working, but we want it to be a good picture. Sometimes people, have gotten their staff to take these pictures and they're out of focus and they're too dark or they're too bright. We really want to create a good library of pictures that we can draw from for our various media uses. Here's some other ones. And I tell people, well, it might be important to you to use pictures of your own participants, and it really is. But we have a little collection of pictures that you could also use too if these represent your people and you don't have the resources to do your own pictures. Brochures, letterhead, business. Think very carefully about the manner and what your message should be, marketabilities of job seekers. Think carefully about how you describe your services. Don't include what they don't need to know. Keep it simple, to the point, straightforward, concise. Your business cards. I encourage you to give all of your direct service staff a business card. It does several things. If people have questions out in the community about who you are and what you're doing, it certainly gives a feeling of professionalism to the community, and it gives them a place to contact for further information. But it also promotes professionalism among your direct service staff, that they are somebody important, that they have a story to tell. So in summary, you really need to have a communication plan. It needs to be formal. It needs to be written. You need to start with the mission, vision, and values. You should focus on all of your external and internal audiences. Your messages should be tailored to a variety of audiences, and you should have a written plan for each audience that is built by your team. So you have a buy-in from a great number of people so that your message can be broadcast more consistently and thoroughly throughout the community. That once you get past the vision and the values and the mission, think broadly about a comparative advantage that describes your agency and why is it good as a service delivery system, how unique it is. then pare it down and practice with your staff. And you could do it with your participants too, of who is this agency and what are we trying to accomplish and why are we here in the community. And don't forget that behavior is communication too. You know, we had a couple different small things that we would remind each other of. How we treat our staff is how our staff will treat participants was a key lesson to learn, and that, you know, you can't have rude behavior and expect people to be respectful of you and to think that regardless if you've got a pretty brochure, that this is a good agency worthy of our support and working together to be successful in the community. So yeah, you've got to bring behavior as well as all of your communication planning together to inform both internal and external audiences about who you are and what you're doing, because you're trying to move everybody thoughtfully in the same direction of being a part of the greater community, leaving the four walls of your facility. So that was kind of a quick run through. If you want to unmute, you could, or if Byron wants to unmute everyone. If anyone has any questions. Nope. Are you here with me, Byron?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
So give you another shot. Any questions from anybody? I want to remind everybody, while you might be thinking about that, that Genni and I are expecting some type of draft plan from everyone, all the providers who are participating, a draft plan of how you're going to implement transformation, what your priorities are, and task analysis of the different aspects that you've targeted as the beginning part of your transformation. Would like to have that very soon, no later than the end of this month, but we would like to really have it sooner than that, because we want to look at it, comment it, and help you make it a better plan. I know both of us have at least half of the plans that we've been working with our providers, but we don't have them all yet. So if you could make that a priority, I'm going to be calling people this week to see where some of you are at.
All right.
If there are no questions, that's it for today.
And we'll reconnect in a couple of weeks for our next webinar.
With Genni on human services.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.